So good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for signing up to our webinar, Ingat, How to Care for Your People at Work. And in this class, you'll be learning about replicable well-being practices from the 2022 Best Workplaces in the Philippines, the stepping stones to becoming an empathetic leader while caring for your own welfare, the characteristics and impact of a mentally healthy workplace, and how to lead by example and execute strategies to improve your organization alongside management. My name is Zoe Rosal. I am a radio DJ from Magic 89.9, and I'm also the marketing business partner for Great Place to Work Philippines. And I'm happy to be with you here today to act as your host. Now, a couple of reminders for the event: be polite, mics off, camera off, and we encourage you to take notes for our 30-minute Q&A session after the class, okay? We usually only have 15 minutes, but for today we've extended it. So I do encourage you to hold on to those questions until the Q&A session. A recording of this webinar will be sent to your inboxes as well for those of you who are unfortunately not here with us today. Thank you so much for being here for those who are. So in case this is your first time attending one of our events, Great Place to Work is the global authority on workplace culture. Our mission is to build a better world, to build a better Philippines by helping organizations become great places to work for all. And I'm proud to share that we recognized 80 companies last year as Great Place to Work certified organizations. Some of them are here today, and we're only in our third year in the country. So there's only so much more that we can do for our Filipino workforce. But for those of you, 56% of you who are not familiar with us, what exactly is it that Great Place to Work does? And I'll be quick with this. So my apologies, my mouse seems to have a mind of its own. So as I was saying, in order to certify our clients, we use Emprising, our powerful employee survey software designed to make it easy for you to survey your employees. It's not really about guessing anymore. Now you can just launch a survey, and we're talking about data that you can obtain that you can actually understand. And Mind You has actually also taken part of this survey, and they've surveyed their employees, and that's the reason why they're also a part of our certified community. And I'm mentioning all of this, it's because why Mind You trusts us as a partner, and how we've identified them as a high trust workplace. Their employees have used our software, and your employees can do that too. So if you wish to learn more about certification, I will talk about that later. So please stay tuned until the end of the webinar. So some information about our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Rhea Gadi, Senior Consultant for Great Place to Work Philippines and ANZ. And Rhea has over 15 years of experience in helping various clients from the top 500 companies in the Philippines operationalize their leadership and talent management strategy to drive sustainable business growth. So Rhea uses a collaborative approach to partnering with country and regional management teams and human resource business partners in designing and executing leadership succession and development initiatives. And she has an established record of growing team members into leadership and consultant SME roles. Our second speaker for today, we have not one, but two, is Miguel Valdez, Head of Operations at Mind You. And Miguel is a psychologist and a psychologist by trade and an entrepreneur at heart. Miguel is driven to reform his industry, and he focuses on developing synergistic and practical approaches to psychology in the business context. So he's also the president and CEO of Vanguard Assessments, which is an assessment and consultancy firm with 30 years of experience. They specialize in talent selection and psychological evaluation of employees. You have two industry professionals here in your midst. And something a little bit about Mind You as well. Mind You is a mental health technology company that provides businesses with access to preventative therapy sessions with licensed psychologists or counselors. So Mind You also allows its employees of subscribed companies to book psychological consultations in a convenient and confidential manner without the need to communicate with the company HR. So it uses anonymized data collected through surveys and psychological assessments. We are pro surveys here. And we have two fantastic speakers with us today, a very important topic. I thank every single one of you for being here. We hope you enjoy this webinar, and now I will happily pass it on to you, Rhea. Rhea, kindly unmute your microphone. Here we go again.
Thank you, Zoe.
Good
And
luck.
maraming salamat. Hold on. So maayong hapon. I know that we have people from Cebu. Oops. Hold on. Let me just skip that. And maybe while my deck is trying to cooperate. On the chat, I wanted to check in. One of the best practices that I have learned from the best workplaces and working with clients is to check in on people that I am with. So in the chat box, can you just put there a word to describe how are you feeling right now, this moment? Okay. Maybe Zoe can just quickly read through the comments. Great. You can also put an emoji. Yes, you can put an emoji
Someone's ecstatic. Someone's hangry. Rhea.
with an H.
Yes.
Later on. I'll join you wherever you will eat or take your snack. But thank you for being with us today. All right. I see. Oh, moving emojis. I didn't know that. Okay. So I finally got it there. So I hope that everyone is feeling okay. Okay is quite a very common term, but that's one of the best practices that I've learned is to check in. And for today, I'm hoping that my role in the conversation, it is a conversation. It's a conversation with you and the rest of the 300 people in this room. So I wanted to get your thoughts. I also wanted to share my thoughts and what I have learned working with our clients and partners at Great Places to Work. So I'll focus on the term first, well-being. So in the chat again, what does well-being mean to you? What's the first thing that comes to mind? So just type it on the chat. This is also data gathering for me and Zoe. And I'll just ask Zoe to read a couple of statements or words that come to mind when we say well-being.
Comfortable. I'm seeing
Yeah.
comfortable. Overall state. Glow and glow.
Go,
That's the
go
first time
and
I've heard
glow.
of it. Glow
Okay,
and
okay.
glow. Dalawang
Interesting.
beses.
Shining, simmering, and shimmering splendor. All
Wholeness.
right. Thank you. Well-being. So we'll capture all your comments. This is a part of the way that we also build our knowledge and our practice. It's really both informal and formal way of gathering your thoughts and data. So let me just go and share our perspective and probably try also to differentiate well-being from mental health, which Miguel will focus more on in a little while. So how we define well-being, it's people's holistic experiences of well-being at work, including mental and physical health, a sense of purpose, social support, and meaningful connections. So just reading how we describe it, it's more you can look at well-being on a more broader area. And mental health would be something more specific. It's one of the domains or areas that comprise overall well-being. Personally, I would also look at mental health as something that may require diagnostics, interventions, or a clinical approach. But I'll let Miguel talk more about that. So just to put into context, what I'll be focusing on is well-being and where does mental health sit around that context. Okay, so I hope for the next 20 remaining 25 minutes that I have with you, I'll be sharing a couple of points, 3 points. The state of employee well-being around the globe and in the Philippines. Um, what we are seeing as 5 dimensions of employee well-being based on a research done by Great Place to Work together with Johns Hopkins University. And we'll also take a look at well-being for leaders. I always hear from my clients, ang hirap maging manager. Mas mahirap maging manager sa panahon ng pandemya, and especially to take care of employees and manage well-being. So we'll take a look at that as well. And then I'll cap it off with what did we learn? What did our team learn from working with the best of the best in the country when it comes to how they care for their employees. So I hope I'll cover those 3 points and leave you with some lessons learned and best practices that you can bring back to your own workplaces, to your own organizations. Okay. So why is there it's a continuous and evolving need to focus on employee well-being. And in 2022, we know what's important. We have to take care of each other in terms of physical health, mental health, financial health, and be concerned about each working person, not only in terms of them as individuals, but also in terms of their family and their community. And this is a quote coming from our CEO, Michael Bush. So if you take a look at it, the past 2 years, the height of the pandemic, moving into hybrid work, transitioning now where we are at, well-being continues to evolve. And that is a priority, remains to be a priority for many organizations. And while it is a priority, many still continue to see to find that holy grail. So what's the formula? Is there a secret formula to make sure that our employees are given the best of employee care? So why is it important? Our study at Great Place to Work shows that employee well-being impacts employee retention and referrals. And that study that I was mentioning together with Johns Hopkins, it's a 2021 study. And the data shows that individuals or employees with a very high level of well-being are 3 times more likely to stay with the organization and 3 times more likely that they will talk about the company that they're with. Oh, ang galing nito, they take care of us, to their friends, to their colleagues, particularly in the pandemic when the great resignation, the great reset, the great reshuffle happened. People are moving. People are wanting to look for the next best organization or next best place where they can grow, not just looking at their career, but where they can grow and be taken care of as a human being. So there is really a lot of value to really look at and improve that experience of employee care at work. And in another study done by Great Place to Work in the US, and this is our future, the Gen Z, the younger ones. I always say the younger, but I'm feeling content that yes, the younger ones, the Gen Z. And in that study, you will see here what do they look for in an employer? They want diversity and equity and inclusion. They want to have fair and livable income. They want to have psychologically healthy place to work. They want to feel welcome in a way that is very unique to them, and they want to have that sense of purpose and a social conscience. So these are the things that Gen Z are looking for. So this is in the US, and maybe let me just engage you. Are you, especially for those who are hiring managers or in talent acquisition, from your interviews, from your new hires, are you seeing the same thing that Gen Z wants? If it's different, just also post it or write it in the chat. So are these the things that you are seeing in your interviews? Okay. So maybe Zoe, can you say yes, no? I hope yes. If there are new things that Gen Z is looking for from their future employers, feel free to type it as well.
We're seeing mostly yeses.
Okay. All right. So thank you for your comments. So in that same study, what we the data shows us is that only 17% of employees are flourishing globally. And by flourishing, we define this that those that are experiencing a high state of well-being or a positive state of well-being. And then nearly as many as 14% are in the opposite end, low state of well-being. So this image or graph shows you the different regions. This is Africa, 23%, Asia, closer to home, 18%, Europe, 14%, Latin America, 19%, and in the US and Canada is 16%. Right. So while this is 2021 data, It might be interesting to see, has the trend changed? Has it improved? We put a lot of efforts and initiatives in place. So next year we'll see, we'll find out. We'll gather some more data and look at some trends that we can share. So here are some specific items that we asked in that survey. And the global state of well-being is not pretty. So hindi siya kagandahan. So 79% are not satisfied with their general well-being. 42% don't find meaning in their work. 37% indicate that they feel that their work doesn't make any difference. 25% feel lonely at work. And then 32% don't feel that they belong. So it's quite dismal, looking at the global numbers. What is even more maybe dismal or concerning, it's no different when we take a look at the Philippine data. So not satisfied with their general well-being, 69%, not finding meaning in their work, 31%. My work doesn't make any difference, 39%. And then 13% feel lonely at work, and 23% feel that they don't belong. O di ba medyo malungkot? Pero that is data. And the good thing with data is it gives us a starting point or a place to begin with and work on. So that is the interesting and helpful thing with data and surveys. And in that same study, what Great Place to Work together with Johns Hopkins discovered, looking at the data, looking at the trends, there are 5 dimensions of employee well-being that contribute to that overall experience. So it's not just a one size. It's not a one size fits all, but there's no one pill. I would say one pill that would give you that overall positive employee well-being experience. So in that study, we looked at 5 areas: mental and emotional support, a sense of purpose, personal support, financial health, and then meaningful connections. So what does this 5 areas mean? It means that it's a guide. It's a guide for HR leaders, for business leaders, that when you take a closer look at how you will shape your well-being initiatives and practices in the workplace for your employees, you may want to take a look at these 5 areas and see, are you able to provide these initiatives or well-being programs that cover these 5 areas? So that's something to think about. You can write it down at this point. So, but there is hope. There's always hope. I'm an optimist, but I also rely and want to use data. So this data shows us the statements in our trust index surveys that are closely linked to those 5 dimensions on well-being. And there are, I think, 7 statements. And the graph here gives you a view of how the best workplaces in 2022 fared compared to the rest of the other certified organizations. So that is when we say 2022 Philippines Rest. So the reason why I place her there is hope, because looking at the numbers here, which is far much higher and far much better than what the rest of the Philippines, the certified organizations are experiencing, we can learn from what their practices are. So just let me run you through quickly what these statements are. This is a psychologically and emotionally healthy place to work. People are encouraged to balance their work life and their personal life. People here are paid fairly for the work they do. And I feel like I make a difference here in the workplace. My work has special meaning. It's not just a job. Hindi to trabaho lang. People look forward to coming to work here. I can be myself around here, and people care about each other here. So these are the statements based on our study at Great Place to Work that are related to that 5 dimensions or the experiences that contribute to overall employee well-being. So we also say, while there is hope, hope is not enough, and hope is not a strategy. So what I also am intending to share with you is, so how does that concretely look like for the best workplaces? So what I'll be sharing with you, and this is also central to our well-being insights report, is we looked at, these are the 25 list makers or winners from last year. So you can see here all 25 organizations. We have the small category, medium category, and large category of the best workplaces in the Philippines. So what we're saying, these 25 are the best of the best in their category. And the categories are defined by their headcount or company size. So we'll take a quick peek at their practices, their experiences on employee well-being, and see what we can replicate, what we can adapt to help improve those experiences back in our workplaces. Okay, so let me just quickly go through the 5 dimensions. I'll give an example for each. I'll keep you in suspense for more practices because a lot of the other practices, more details are available in the insights report that will be made available next week. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so let's talk about mental and emotional support. So it means cultivating a high trust culture. This is fundamental to a work environment that builds and sustains positive mental energy. So our research shows that being able to provide and offer initiatives to support mental and emotional support creates a positive attribution. So it's not just about, okay, you do physical activities like the centering. It's really initiatives or intentional efforts by management to help appease the anxiety or the worries of the employees that is causing them stress, anxiety. So, and also helps them change the energy and change it into a positive one. And then later on, with Miguel, maybe he can share more about what can employers do or leaders do, other practices to promote that sense of positive energy in the context of mental health. So what is one example that I can share based from the stories and data from our best workplaces in the Philippines? So this is from ADP. ADP is one of our winners in the large category. And what we also saw in the trends, particularly during the pandemic and even now when inflation is high, people are looking for jobs, is if you are especially an income earner or a single income earner in the family, you would need, ang dami mong stress. You're thinking about, okay, where do I find the next paycheck to feed my family? Or the stress of people being responsible, not just for your immediate family, but perhaps even for extended family. So a practice that ADP does is the care is extended not just for employees, but for their families as well, especially if the financial obligation or having to care for families is causing mental and emotional stress or concern for employees. So one practice is an employee assistance program that covers the health and well-being of associates and extended to their families. So the company ensured that its associates have the tools and resources to maintain or improve their overall health, and their families as well have access to these resources. So with that in mind, it gives you a sense of the care is not just about caring for the employees, but also caring for what the employees care about. And that's a practice at ADP. Okay. And then the last point, the agad lumabas, is building the knowledge around mental health and being making this available to employees and to their families. And we've seen also to be helpful in the context of well-being and mental health is you need to know, you need to educate, you need to get the information on what is causing perhaps the stress or the anxiety and what you can do about it, and that there is help that you can go to. All right. So the next one is sense of purpose. Ayan. So I always see this in my culture coaching sessions. And interestingly, there are a couple of organizations and by generation where there is a strong sense of purpose. Na if I don't see this, I get stressed out. I get frustrated, and it's really that meaningful work. It's finding your job to be personally fulfilling for you. And what we're seeing is if this is not in place, it causes some concern or stress or worry because you're not able to fulfill that. So on the flip side, if a sense of purpose is in place, it adds to that feeling of okay, I'm making an impact, I'm making a difference. And this is particularly common, or I've seen a trend particularly with the younger workforce, the millennials, the Gen Zs. And one example where the company is very intentional to make sure that employees' sense of purpose is aligned with the company is SE Johnson. And SE Johnson is a leading manufacturer of household cleaning products, and to them it's caring for the family. As an organization, that's their purpose as a company. And this alignment of the bigger purpose in the company and aligning it with each individual teams gives them that sense of fulfillment and helps create that positive experiences on well-being. So for example, in the second point, employees from different teams across levels, they come together and they create their functional strategy in support of that care for the family to create a better world as a strategy. And then they also find ways to make sure that everyone understands their purpose and everyone is connected to that purpose. So that is Essie Johnson, another best workplace list maker. The third point is personal support. It means an atmosphere where employees feel supported and respected, provided and with and control in achieving goals. So a common example as a best practice that I see this in is in the context of career development, training and development, where organizations provide initiatives or practices to support the career aspirations and growth of employees at work. So one example or one company that we've seen that has this very deliberate as a strategy is Synchrony Global Services. They also allow their employees to make a decision in terms of how they will manage their work, such as the option to choose their work schedules. In 2021, they allowed the flexible Fridays as a permanent option. And then the Bibo program, talagang Bibo. Bibo program is a self-nomination process where employees are awarded project roles to gain experience and build network. So it's outside of the normal role, but it gives that opportunity to discover what's their potential, what's their talent, what's their skill, and how do they apply this in other opportunities like projects and also work with others. So that is Synchrony Global Services Financial. The fourth point, or the fourth area, is financial health, and this is looking at stability, financial security in the context of receiving fair pay, but also equity in compensation practices. It's really finding one of the sources of stress is really where how can I provide for a family financially with all the responsibilities and obligation. And this is an interesting practice during the pandemic that we saw with carparts.com. And what is interesting in their practice is it's not just the outright giving of cash or in a monetary form, but it's building the literacy or helping the employees learn about how can they become financially secure or financially responsible. So they had a financial literacy program. They offer them stock options. And also part of that financial literacy program is to see what options can they invest and how can they make use of that investment or their income wisely. So that is car parts for you. Okay. The last one is meaningful connection. So it's having meaningful and caring relationships with coworkers and leaders. And in the pandemic until now, we're on Zoom, di ba? Parang lahat na may Zumba, Zoom party, lahat. It's amazing how people are able to leverage and be very creative on how people can be connected through technology. But I like this example from Accenture, and Accenture is one of our best workplaces winners in the large category. And I lifted this quote from Ellen Shook. Ellen Shook is the Accenture's Chief Leadership and Human Resource Officer, and she was our speaker at the Great Place to Work Summit in Orlando. And this is a story that she shared about how Accenture promotes or ensures well-being of its employees. So she did an experiment, and then she spent 2 weeks writing personal letters to each member of the global management team, and they had them delivered into their rooms. And then the amazing response was really extraordinary. So it goes back, if you take a look at some of the practices, journaling practices, and writing practices to check in on everyone or to show express gratitude is a very good way to connect meaningfully because you affirm the person's impact on you even by just saying thank you already means a lot and can create a lot already of impact. So the other thing that I like that Ellen Shook said during that talk is what I think it showed each one of us is when you see someone, you have to see somebody first as a human being first, not as an employee, not as one of Fortune's most powerful women, but as an employee, a human being that makes a big difference to people. And that is how you can achieve what it is we're trying to achieve one person at a time, even when there is 721,000 of us. And I like this because coming from a senior executive who does that gesture, it's really reflecting how they live out employee care in Accenture. So it doesn't have to be grand, but just the simple act of writing and thanking, checking in already creates that meaningful connections with employees because you don't know in that very moment who might need that little perk up or uplifting for that moment. Okay. Um, but the challenge there as well is
She stopped my video.
yes. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I'm almost at the end of my part, but I wanted to highlight in our research and in the report that we came up with, leaders are always critical to make sure that employee well-being takes place and it's delivered. But most of the time, leaders, well, like Ellen Shook mentioned, leaders before they are leaders they are also human and they also experience burnout. And the World Health Organization reports that 20% of employees globally experience burnout. And if this is not managed and managed properly, it can impair a good workplace culture. I like this research by Development Dimensions International. Their global leadership forecast in 2021 show that 60% of leaders say that they feel used up. And some of those 60% in the whole report also indicate intentions to look for career advancement elsewhere, or not intending to stay. And 86% of high potentials feel the same way. So imagine your high potentials, if they're your Gen Z or your future leaders, and they're feeling that burnout or feeling used up, you will be left with an empty bench. So, what did we see in terms of the trend? So what we did in the same data analysis with the best workplaces, we had a closer look at how leaders are doing from the best workplaces with the PH rest. So 3 points that we saw in the data: leaders at work at best workplaces are strongest or have highest scores in sense of purpose and meaningful connections. And this is across frontline managers, the mid-level managers, and their executives, all scoring 90% and higher in these areas. The best workplaces leaders outperforms the PHRES in financial health. There's more than 10% gap difference in the scores. And there is more intentional care with frontline leaders versus the frontline leaders of the PHRES, more than 10% gap. So the third point I wanted to highlight is it makes sense to start caring correctly with your frontline leaders, because your frontline will move up into the organization. And when they move up into higher roles, they will amplify the positive experiences of care with their own teams. So that is the high level data that we saw. And this will also be available in the Insights report. Okay, so how do you take care of yourselves better as leaders? So one is allow yourself to be vulnerable. You're not an Avenger, hindi kayo Superman, hindi tayo superheroes, we're also human. We have to say if we are burnt out and we need help. It's being authentic to ourselves and also to our team. Speaking of team, you have to empower and trust your team that they can do the work, the delegated task, especially if the additional task is causing burnout. The third point is they say sometimes it's lonely at the top. So you need to create circles of trust and support that you can sort of be your peers, provide you with a listening ear, try to just hear you out. So you need to have that circle of trust and support for leaders. And the last point is practice what you preach. You can't just tell your team, go do self-care if you yourself is not practicing it or is not doing it. Okay? So what can we do as leaders to promote well-being in the workplace? So 6 points or tips that you can do: regularly measure, check in with your employees' well-being through formal approaches such as surveys or just casual check-ins. Send powerful, simple signals that well-being matters. Again, a daily practice of checking in, of being kind, of listening builds that habit and sends that signal that caring for employees is a way of work and part of the culture in the organization. And then connect your employees with well-being experts if needed. Have your local champions. Um, in one of the best workplaces, when there's Coda Payments, they have their culture club. And these are the ones that who advocate and champion their well-being initiatives in the workplace. Foster an environment of ongoing development, and then empower employees to shape their contribution. Okay. And so 3 things. Let me cap off with 3 things that we learned from the 2022 Philippines Best Workplaces. Um, it's intentional. It should be empowering and it should be authentic. So intentional means it's really connecting care to your purpose, to your values and strategy. That's very evident when you go to DHL. Um, make those initiatives or strategy inclusive, flexible, and holistic for everyone. So you take a look at the entire human being when you take a look at your strategy for well-being. And the last point is transparency and collaboration between employees and leaders. At Cisco, they have a Safe Talk community where all employees have that safe space to share their experiences and stories and challenges on mental health and well-being, and they learn from each other. But it doesn't stop there. They empower employees and leaders, okay, to be part of the solution, to be responsible for each other, to take care of each other. Well-being is key for leaders. So I couldn't emphasize this any more, but it's often we forget about it as leaders, and it's good that we need to be reminded there are tools, resources to support leaders, not just from a training perspective, but also in terms of the peer support, and also how leaders work with their teams. And the last point is what we've seen, very critical and core to the well-being practices of best workplaces. It all starts from a place of trust. And great workplaces that have a very deep foundation of trust enables employees to say that I feel that I'm respected and that my company cares for me as a human being first. Same as Alicia said. So they see me as a human being with unique needs, with very different needs, and they respond to it. I feel respected by my leaders when they do that. And I see that they practice what they preach. I believe that they care for us because I see it in their behaviors. I also see it that they do it. They practice self-care, and they make time to listen and have conversations to their team, especially when they are having challenges that impact well-being. And they are fair, particularly in terms of practices and efforts when it comes to employee well-being. They make sure that there's no discrimination into well-being practices. It's very inclusive. And then when you take a look at this, when people feel respected, they believe that there's an authentic intention to care and it's inclusive, employees will talk about the company. They feel proud to be part of such a caring environment, a safe environment where managers and the business owners authentically find ways to make sure that they have a positive well-being at
Hi,
work.
Rhea.
Yes?
Let's do this. Let's give them this last 1 point so that we can head on
Okay.
over to Miguel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's the last point, actually. And then I think the last point is camaraderie, which is essentially one of the things that we saw is how they build and empower each other, making each other responsible to care for other employees at work. Okay. So that is my last point in terms of what you've learned, and more details, more lessons and best practices available in the Wellbeing Insights report coming out next week. So thank you for listening, and I'll turn the floor now to um, Miguel, who'll talk more about mental health. Thank you. Sorry, Miguel, for the overtime.
Thank you very much, Rhea. Miguel, if we can have you on screen, please. We'd love to segue you, employee well-being into mental health.
Zoe, my camera has been disabled.
Let's try to figure this out, shall we? In the meantime, I'm also launching a poll in just a little bit. So let's see how we can make things work.
That's okay. Wait, that's not my.
Miguel, you
There.
should be, there
Yeah.
you go. We've got you.
Whew. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. And um, I I think what the some of the information that we're hoping to discuss today will really reflect some of the findings that Rhea shared on, with regard to the findings of Great Places to Work. Okay. So again, good afternoon. My name is Miguel Valdez. I'm head of operations for Mind You. My specialization is actually in assessment and profiling. Okay. And my role in the organization really is to measure the impact of mental health in the organization, right? But more precisely, the impact of mental health in the organization in terms of the business context. Okay, so just a little background. I know that a brief a brief discussion was made already about what Mind You is. I'll just do it again. Mind You is a telemental health organization. We provide therapy sessions, preventative and curative, with licensed psychologists. And we provide data insights so that business owners and top management can make very clear decisions on how to improve, the mental health workspace that they have. Okay. So before I start, I do have a question, and I got this idea from Rhea. Um, this is a question to the audience. How much do you think it costs your company if you have employees that have mental health problems? So just type what you think how much it costs. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I can see everyone typing a lot, and there's even somebody's 200% of their salaries a lot. Okay. So what Mind You has been endeavoring to do in the past 2 years was actually to measure that. Okay. Because we understand that in any business, um, business owners are always concerned, or at least partially concerned, about the bottom line. When I invest in something, it has to contribute not just uh, not just a feeling of 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 safety, but actual impact in the organization. And this is the research that I'll be sharing with today. And our current data, we are able to confidently say that if you are in an organization that has poor work health, all right, and the employee also has poor mental health, it will cost the organization around 3,312 pesos per minimum wage employee annually. So the larger your corporate, uh, the larger your population size, the more expensive it actually gets if you leave them untreated. Okay, this cost doesn't even include onboarding fee, time lost in terms of training, and all the other administrative and clerical functions needed to take care of employees as they come in, are trained, or are oriented, or when they exit. Okay, so um, in this slide, I'm going to explain the core component of where that 3,300 pesos comes from. So this picture, okay, is actually a picture of me a couple of hours before this talk. And I am absolutely nervous. I mean, it's the same, I'm wearing the same polo, I just put my coat on, but I am absolutely nervous that I spent a good 30 minutes or maybe 1 hour just trying to keep composed in front of my team. I get nervous, okay? I get nervous when I do public engagements like this. And this is a very simple but relatable example um, of how presenteeism will manifest in the office. It took me an hour to calm down. I was not able to write, read, make decisions, or coordinate with my team effectively because I was simply trying to manage the fear. Okay. And that is a very real and hopefully relatable example for the audience here. For those who may not have may not have had severe mental health problems, that feeling that you get that paralyzes you before a talk is a small taste of what presenteeism is. So presenteeism is when an employee, right, comes into the organization or comes into the office knowing that they're mentally unfit to work, but they're compelled for whatever reasons that may be to go in and show up for work. So they are present in the office, but they are spending most of their energy just fighting the symptoms or managing the symptoms of their mental health problem. Okay. So on average, from our list of organizations and the number of employees, 7 out of 10 employees experience high levels of presenteeism. Okay. And so this is practiced, across different levels. But it is felt even more so when the organization itself has poor work health qualities. Okay. So to be more specific, presenteeism alone will cost around 1,872. All right. So the first number that I showed you, the 3,300, is composed of two parts. The individual has a problem, and there's also a problem in the environment. Okay. So what we wanted to show here is data that will provide very clear answers as to how you can improve mental health, or what are the things that you can kind of do to or act on to actually incrementally improve mental health. And what our research shows is that work health, the structure, the organization, the relationships with your supervisor or the employee engagement, has a strong relationship with mental health. Okay, so I'll give you an example. These items that we have here um, have very, very clear connections in improving mental health. Okay. So if you have an organization in terms of culture where people are afraid to talk about their mental health, that is a poor work health criteria that will dip and affect mental health in general for the whole organization. Right. If you have a supervisor, okay, who is open to new ideas, that lifts mental health in in the employee and in the organization. Okay, and of course, employee engagement. If the environment alone is supportive and safe, it increases the level of confidence and efficacy of an employee that has impact into their productivity and work performance. So the items that I have here basically are the external, okay, aside from addressing mental health symptoms in itself, but these are the key areas in an organization that has impact on improving mental health. Right. So next slide is mental health at work. Right. So how would mental health at work manifest itself? Okay, and what are the benefits of this thing? So the first item here is psychological safety. um, Psychological safety has been thrown around a lot over the past 3 years because of the pandemic. Okay. Not, a lot of people use this word, but they don't generally understand um, what it actually entails. So, psychological safety is basically not only do you have the processes and resources to provide that safety, okay, but you have the people engaging to support that culture of safety as well. Okay, and this is not just for HR to do, but it is in the day-to-day acts of engagement from the rank and file all the way up to top management. Right. Next slide. Um, One of the noticeable data points in terms of controlling and predicting and improving mental health in an organization is actually effective leadership and management. So a lot of the things that I'm saying right now is very reflective of what Rhea had said in the last session. But we are able to our data, our research is able to tell you its actual strength and contribution and how much effort you need to put in that particular function. And what we've seen across the 25 organization clients, this is not all our clients, but just 25 that we have in this data set so far, is that a good leader is a core contributor to improving mental health and maintaining mental health in the organization. Okay. Mental health also has very clear impacts in terms of work dynamics. Just like the things that Rhea said, where there's trust and respect, when there is a strong element of mental health and psychological safety, there is an increase in productivity because people communicate better. People are willing to give more of themselves. People are willing to make sacrifices for the team because they appreciate the relationship that they have with their team. People are more than willing to do work outside of their scope so that the quality of another is even better, right? Correct, Ferdinand. Mental health employees are productive at their work because they are engaged. It's as if they're taking care of a living organism and they're all participating in cultivating that. Okay. Um, just like again what Rhea said in the slide before, relationships seems to be one of the core contributions in improving work health and mental health. Um, the supervisor or the manager has about 30% sway or weight in terms of how the employee will experience good work health and how even the employee can improve their own mental health problems with the help of a good supervisor, right? Next slide. And of course, sorry, of course, promoting inclusivity and diversity is a very good practice of psychological safety, right? Because of course we know that the needs of the LGBTQ are front and center for our generation, right? And when an organization makes it a point to care for them, it's a clear signal to the rest of the organization that these people's needs, we are taking them seriously. Any other needs that you have, we can take them seriously as well, right? So next slide. So what are the descriptors or the criterias of a mentally healthy organization? I chose to simplify the statements to something more relatable and not take an academic route. But basically, people who are committed to the organization, or if you have okay, so people that are committed to the organization is a sign of a mentally healthy, committed in a sense that they have a sense of ownership and accountability. Okay, people that are invested in their role, meaning they don't see their role as a static thing that ends after 6 o'clock, but they take it home with them. They become ambassadors of their role and eventually the company. The availability of care. Availability of care is very important where if employees are not made aware that all these resources are being made available to them, that perception of a mentally healthy organization also takes effect, right? And naturally, a supportive work environment and healthy work relationships. So if your organization has 5 of these qualities, then chances are you are in a organization that has very good work health. Okay. So a truly great place to work. So what we have here, of course, since our data is focused on measuring in terms of revenue and cost, so that business owners will really see the return of their investment. I chose to talk about Ernst& Young. It's one of the Fortune 500 companies, massive accounting firm. Okay. Next slide. And they themselves have implemented their own holistic approach to well-being, robust mental health resources. And here's the interesting thing: they have anti-mental health stigma campaigns. It's not even psychological education. It's not even breaking the stigma. It's anti-mental health stigma. There is an active attempt by the organization to not explain that it's bad, but to really enforce that this is something, this behavior of making people embarrassed of showing vulnerability, or displaying emotions at the workplace are 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 not good things, right? Um, of course, the outcomes, of course, there's 85% reduced symptoms and so on and so forth, right? So this is a case study from our own clientele, minimize the data as much as possible. But this organization is from a BPO. They scored one of the highest in terms of work health, right? Work health, which is 93%. And then out of that 140, 160 employees that they had, only 28 showed significant risk in terms of developing mental health problems. We have to be clear here that it's not that the 28 have mental health problems, but the 28 show signs that if left ignored and untreated, it will eventually evolve into something severe. Okay. And of course, 57% had minimum to low levels of depression, which is very rare. Okay. Now, what worked for them and what we noticed in the data that was one of the main, I suppose, barriers or qualities that kept the organization strong was that they had fantastic relationships. They had fantastic supervisors that had really good relationships with their team. So the employees said that even though we don't have this benefit and we don't have that benefit, but because their supervisor was so supportive of them, it kept the organization healthy, right? And these are actual data points of what we learned about them. Supervisors showed value with conversation and feedback, and supervisors showed fairness when it comes to conflict. Very, very basic. Okay. So what can your company do to promote mental health in the workplace? Just go through. So what you're seeing here are structural structural uh, structural components that your organization can implement, meaning the creation of a policy, the integration of that policy into your employees' benefits, training and training for employees and how to communicate their emotions, how to deal with mental health concerns, and of course, different accessible mental health services. These are the structural components that will improve or that will lay the groundwork for the improvement of the mental health landscape of your organization. Right now, if the first slide was structure, this is where the focus of communication and campaigning to improve the culture begins. One, of course, you need supervisors and leaders that lead by example. That's pretty straightforward. But there should be available educational content or sources of information where employees can go discreetly or openly to understand either the situation of others or their own situations. And of course, wellness webinars, right? The important thing about the wellness webinar is that it is a sign of community. If in that webinar, the employees see that 90% of all the employees went and it was not mandatory, then there is a sense of community. There is a sense of realization that, okay, I may be experiencing a mental health problem, but it seems as though everybody else is experiencing the same thing, right? And of course, creating a positive work environment. So supervisors, just like in the last slide, who have to lead by example, also have to engage in frequently checking in with their team and participate in providing opportunities to learn and mentor, right? So learning sessions aren't simply restricted to, mind you, providing opportunities to learn and build skill, but it is also an opportunity for supervisors and managers to develop that relationship where they support each other through skill and experience. Okay. All right. So if any of you are interested in some of the data and or more data, you can take a screenshot of the QR code that we have here to lead you to some of our is okay.
Hi,
So
Miguel.
how do mind you services impact your organizations? Yes,
Hi, Miguel.
I'm
Just
here.
jumping in. Can you flash the previous screen just one more time? We're experiencing a little bit of choppiness from you. but we kind of got the gist. If you could kindly flash the QR codes one more time and repeat that section.
Sure. Oh, yeah. There we go. Can you see that, Zoe?
Yes, we're seeing it. Thank you very much.
Sure. I'll give it maybe 10 seconds and we'll go to the next slide. Okay. So these QR codes
All right. Let's give it a couple more seconds, shall we? I don't know about you guys, but I'm based in Quezon City and I'm experiencing a very dark cloud looming over. So perhaps some areas of Manila are experiencing internet issues. So yes, see, where are you guys from, by the way? Which cities are you from? While we troubleshoot this.
Hello? Sorry, I
Hi,
had to
Miguel.
change
Are you back?
laptop.
No problem, no problem. We're all patient here. Everyone's just telling us where they're from, and I'm sure everybody knows what it's like for the internet to go a little bit wonky, for the connection to be unstable. But you know what matters is that everyone here is patient and is with you. So just feel free to pick up where you left off, Miguel.
Okay, so like what I mentioned, the criteria of a good organization, what I wanted to show you is how our different interventions address these things. So the wellness webinars are a display of the availability of care. Our psychological consultations do the same thing as well. As you can see, some of the feedback that we put here, it allows people to privately deal with their problems and hopefully eventually build the confidence to approach the rest of the organization and as to how they can work better as they carry their own burdens, right? We have information here on the impact of psychotherapy. And you know, just to give you guys an idea, you don't need to go to a therapist with a problem. You can just go there and enjoy the luxury of talking to somebody who has no idea who you are, is not going to judge you, and it's simply going to listen and have an honest conversation with you. Okay. There is a lot of freedom and a change in mood that you would experience when you're able to unload without judgment. Okay. And of course, lessons from mental health training and workshops. Okay. The data, of course, that we are sharing right now is acquired or through surveys, but we focus more on the psychological and the organizational assessments. And it's here where we can kind of tell you know, business owners and top management, okay, this department needs this because this is what it showed, and then this department needs more training in terms of communication and so on and so forth, right? So to wrap it all up, if you don't create a great rewarding workplace for people to work, they won't do great work. And hopefully what I shared with you today would be something that you can share with your top management, and that they realize that there is a impact to the organization's bottom line if left ignored. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miguel, and thank you for being patient with us, you and everyone else in the audience. We appreciate everyone's enthusiasm. Thank you for pointing out that there were some issues, but of course, we appreciate you being here. As to echo Miguel, if you don't create a great, rewarding workplace for people to work, they don't do great work. Similar to if we don't create a great and rewarding place to run a webinar, we can't have a great webinar. And that's really because of every single person here. So don't leave just yet, because as I mentioned, we have an extended Q&A session. So if I could kindly ask Rhea to come back on screen, we'll start to answer some of the questions. I know some of you have already filled up the Q&A. There is a separate Q&A section, by the way, here on Zoom. So please, if you have any questions with regards to employee well-being and mental health, there's my timer, please do submit them. Rhea and Miguel, can I ask you both to come back on screen?
Yeah, Zoe, can you give me access to turn on my camera? Thanks.
Okay, you should have access now.
All right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. So we have one question here to start us off, okay? And this is for Rhea, and then you can feel free to bounce off Miguel. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Okay, let's give this some time. So this is from Pressy. Pressy is asking, how do you manage employees that are going through mental health issues while still achieving business objectives, even after they've already been given many concessions? Let me repeat the question. How do you manage employees that are going through mental health issues while still achieving business objectives, even after they've already been given many concessions? Rhea, I'll start with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I understood the question correctly. So you have, is it Pressy? You have Pressy as a case of a performer because the person is still achieving results, but seems the person has mental health issues. So if that is the context, the first of all, I want to commend that the person being open and the manager being aware that there is a mental health concern. I think that's important. So they are able to address or help the person, however way that the company knows. Um, I'm just curious in the context of concession because you have a performer who has mental health issues. I think maybe is it because the company is worried that the mental health issue might impact the performance eventually? So maybe if that's the context, I would say that the regular check-in and conversations. Oh, okay. No longer performing. Oh, okay. So that's okay. So it's a non-performer. Okay. So it's not okay. Thank you. So you have a non-performer and the assumption is the mental health issue might be impacting and contributing to the non-performance, right? Okay. Um, I would say that I think you have to be guided on what the labor now allows in terms of if those are the cases, mental health issue as impacting the performance of the person. I know that there are guidelines provided by the labor as well as I think the mental health act. You have to look at them together. um, on a personal view, I would be more prudent to say that taking all measures to support the employee, and offering maybe a change in role that may be less triggering for the person. So I guess it's important to know what is causing or triggering the person the mental health issues, and see if the person is improving with the intervention, if intervention is given or with the proper support is given, um, before you go decide either to let go of the person. I would be more prudent and try to exhaust all possible ways that can support the person um, by management. So that's my take.
Uh, I'd like to share. Actually, Rhea, while you were answering, you were already checked. I checked all the answers that I was gonna give. So the first one, of course, is you have to take a look at the scope of the Department of Labor and legal implications. Okay. Next is, of course, you have to take a look at the coverage of your commitments of benefits to your employee. Okay. The objective here is that the organization has to show on paper that they've extended um, attempts to improve the well-being of the individual to the best of their abilities. Right. Now, there will be some organizations that after going through those details, they will act on furthering this individual's leaving the company. Another outcome that I've seen is that but this requires the consent of the employee, is basically they still are given mental health treatment, but they end up eventually on unpaid leaves. Okay, so there's a bit of a agreement with the organization that we will support you in terms of your mental health. However, you have to temporarily let go of your responsibilities, and then you can come back after a certain number of months. And this really stems from the relationship again that the employee has with their supervisor, because most organizations, most top management will not probably have that kind of relationship with their rank and file, right? But so it is the supervisor who kind of vouches that yes, this person, just give him time, and if he takes the treatment, he will improve, right? So you can kind of look at it like a family scenario, people in that family taking turns to care for that individual. Okay, so legally, you have to exhaust all options to provide care, and then uh, upon the exhaustion of all those legal options, it is a discussion of how to have continued care that does not impede projects and output in the organization, right? These are very, very sensitive conversations to have, and it's always done best with a with the immediate supervisor that they have a very trusting relationship with, right? So that would be my answer, very similar to Reyes as well. And it's just a matter of creativity and trust, right?
That's
That's it.
great. It's a
That's
matter of,
my
yeah, it's a matter of creativity and trust. I think that that's also one of my
yes.
greatest takeaways from both of your conversations. And we've learned actually from both of your presentations that it's also equally important to keep the line of comms open, right? And so we are actually, that actually segues me into my next question that we have over here. How can leaders show that employees can share to them openly about their mental health issues with them? So it's more like, how do you even take the first step? I think this person is asking.
I
We can
think I
start
can
with you,
answer that.
Miguel. Yeah.
Yeah. So the leader always has to take the first step, right? So the leader has to display vulnerability authentically enough to build that trust, but not too much vulnerability in a sense where it starts to erode into the perspective of competence, right? There's a balance that you have to strike as a leader, where you have to still display competence but be vulnerable at the same time. When that vulnerability is presented, the next step is teaching them how to communicate concerns, right? How do you communicate that vulnerability? How do you communicate that weakness? And then once those two core components are established, that opens up the gateway for the rest of the team in terms of how they themselves will communicate with their leader. Okay, I'll give you a very good example. In my team, my rule is any problem you mistake, that any problem that you make is actually my mistake. So I build a sense of safety and accountability that at the end of the day, don't worry, because since I'm your boss, it will always be my fault because I did not take care of you, right? And the impact of that from the different employees that I've always had is that when something goes wrong, they don't hide it from me. They run to me right away, right? This is what happened. What do I do? So there's no fear of them, um, beating around the bush, walking on eggshells, afraid because they're going to be punished. They just come straight to me because they realize that I have made it a point that what they do is at the end of the day my responsibility as well, right? That their effort is shared with me, and that I will carry the burden of the consequences of their mistakes and not leave them alone to suffer.
Wonderful, Miguel. Thank you so much for that. Even I was trying to observe as much as I can, so that I can apply it into my own teams as well. Rhea, Would you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Maybe just one thing to add to what Miguel said is um, maybe in line with being vulnerable is also the humility to ask for feedback. My own experience as a leader, and because I didn't know that I was creating a toxic environment for my team until somebody told me. So it was a blind spot for me. So I guess for leaders, the humility to ask for feedback from your team on how do you want to be helped? How can I help you? And the second point on follow through. I mean, checking in is great, but to follow through on the support that might be needed coming from the manager is also important. So there.
Thank you so much, Rhea, and thank you so much, Miguel. We have an interesting follow-up actually to the previous question. Tiffany is asking, wouldn't there be any issues in their team members with regards to accountability when you as the leader are taking responsibility?
Um, when you have as much authority as you have if you're the leader, right? Quality control, um, completion of deadlines. At the end of the day, it's always the leader who is accountable. His failure to effectively utilize and mobilize his team, manage resources, complete targets, it always falls to the leader. As for the smaller, the subcomponents of that team's friction, right? The subcomponents that have failed within the team, then of course that is going to be addressed in a more personal and more HR way. But in terms of the culture, right? In terms of the culture, the leader is always responsible, and part of that responsibility is of course what improving the function of that team, and it also includes that leader calling out to that team member the failures or the functions that they were not able to complete in that task. What I want to clarify is that accountability as a whole, it's because I'm talking about the team and all other external parties demanding the completion of the project from that team. The leader is always accountable, right?
Well said, Miguel. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's answer another question. Oh, Rhea, do you have any notes on that?
No. I'm just reminded by that question of one principle I learned in until now is you provide support without removing responsibility and accountability. So they're similar to what Miguel was clarifying.
Good points. Okay, so we've got another question coming here. Actually, we've got two questions that I will merge because they seem to be overlapping in themes. How can we deal with depression or mental health issues at work as a leader while addressing for the mental health issues of our personnel? I believe Miguel covered some of this in his talk, but I'm going to repeat the question. How can we deal with mental health issues if we are and address the issues of our personnel, of our employees, of our team members, if we ourselves are also experiencing these?
I have an answer for that, if I can go ahead. So
Sure.
I myself am diagnosed with depression, and you'd be surprised how effective it has been in terms of rallying the team. I Part of the way that I work with my team is that we we try to make it very we we make it as transparent and as safe as possible for people to admit that I can do this and I can't do this, right? So the ability to communicate about capacity and completion is easily shared by the group. And when you have a team where people are very considerate and respectful of your conditions, you will find that the community, right? The community compensates for whatever suffering you might be internally experiencing with your mental health symptoms. Now, of course, mental health problems at its most severe form, then of course you will need, very clear clinical and medical interventions. But the role of the community, right, in creating that safe space, the role of the leader, kind of setting the tone of how vulnerability, weakness, and sickness is dealt with. Like I said, poor work health contributes low high work health, meaning a good working environment, actually decreases the risk of a mental health problem.
Thanks for that, Miguel. Rhea, do you have any thoughts on that?
I was just thinking one of the things as a leader, and I mentioned my experience as a toxic boss before, was to acknowledge that you have a mental health issue. I think that's important. But that's also not easy to do. But I think that's an important thing, to become aware that you have that issue, and then you need help wherever that help or support would come from. It could come from your boss, your spouse, or as Miguel said, a therapist, or just somebody to talk to. So I guess acknowledging and becoming aware that you have one is the first important step to help you. Because we say we can't pour from an empty cup. We can't help others if we ourselves are not well, right?
That's absolutely true, Rhea. Remove the stigma. Be the first to acknowledge this. That's what we've learned from the last hour that we've been together. We've got 10 minutes left for Q&A. We have another interesting question here. So we've talked about employee well-being. We've talked about mental health. But Rhea and Miguel, how do you recommend to manage an employee that lacks a sense of purpose and responsibility at work? How do you manage an employee that lacks a sense of purpose and responsibility at work? How do you care for this person?
I have an answer. I actually had an employee like this some time ago. Um, he was quite competent, and he would do the required amount of work. But I could always see that he lacked the passion and the conviction of what he was doing. So what I told him was that I pulled him aside and said, "Look, I can see that you like the people that you're working with, but you don't really love what you're doing. Now I need to make it clear that I'm not keeping you here in this position, uh, you know, uh, to stay here and be unhappy here. You can stay here in the company until you find your purpose. Okay, you can keep working. Just do your job, but I don't need you to be overly excited about your task. You can stay here until you find out what you love and what you do. And then if you find that passion, then go ahead, let me know. You can resign. It's fine, right? So that simple conversation actually kept him in the organization for another 2 years, because he had grown quite comfortable in the environment that he was in, which I even brought up the topic to say, okay, you're way too comfortable now. I'm worried that you're not investing in things in the future. Do you want to focus on your masters? Do you want to go abroad? What's your plan? So that safety, just making them aware that it's okay not to, it's okay and safe to not be enthusiastic about what you're doing. You can stay with me for a while until you figure out what you want. That conversation helped a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Um,
Miguel. And thanks for sharing that story too. I'm sure that we have a couple of managers here who have related to that. And so we appreciate the honesty that you've taken to share that story. Rhea, go ahead.
no, I'll just add. I guess the word purpose sometimes can be overwhelming to some. Purpose, mission, and what I've learned, even in my personal experience, sometimes purpose, you don't become or discover it even you're already 50, you're already 40. So it's a process, I guess, of discovery. And in one of the sessions I've attended, I like this line: clarity is in the process. So you allow yourself to experience all the things that are in your life now, and you will somehow find dots that you will somehow connect. Because sometimes when I was younger, it was ambition. Then as I got older, it became a mission, it became a purpose. When you think about it, um, those are perhaps dots in your life that when you try to connect them, it creates that nice picture of a purpose. You could may call it purpose, you may call it a mission. But to build on what Miguel said, it's the conversation. Managers can offer an authentic, ongoing conversation to let that employee or team member experience that self-discovery process. So, and it's not to feel bad if you don't have that concrete purpose right now. It could change, it could evolve. I think the thing is to continuously have that conversation, and as managers help shape how that purpose might look like.
Thank you very much, Rhea, and thank you very much, Miguel. Do we have any other questions coming from the audience? We have less than 5 minutes left. So far, while waiting for the other questions to roll in, let me do a quick check-in for our speakers, Rhea and Miguel. I know that we've been here for quite some time, and just hold on a little bit longer. How are you guys doing? How are
I'm
you?
good.
I'm good.
I'm more relaxed now that I'm not pressured to present too much. I'm now more relaxed.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And well, you've been getting an overwhelmingly positive response, actually. I don't know if you were noticing the chat, but people were cheering you on, people were supporting you. And I'm also appreciative of the audience that we have here today, the patience that you have all extended and the questions that are coming in is helping us start and open the conversation for employee well-being and mental health. Okay, let's give it a Oh, we have a question here from Maribeth, and it's actually a follow-up to a previous question about taking accountability as a leader. Now, I think, Miguel, you've opened a very interesting topic here that maybe we can talk about some more, perhaps offline or online on our socials, we'll see. But Maribeth is curious, will it always have to be the leader's accountability and failure if one of their team members consistently won't improve? Can you please share some advice on how this can be worked out despite the effort to provide guidance, mentoring, and support?
Okay. Once you've built that open and trusting relationship with the employee, part of that is an education of how businesses work. It is a transaction, right? A business is a transaction, and and if the employee himself is unmotivated, unwilling to work, the company will give you all that is needed of you, or what you need at that point. But if you want more, you want a career, you want a better salary, you want better benefits, you want more, then naturally more is to be expected. And a good organization will be, if you don't want to do any more, that's okay. Enjoy the benefits that we've given you at this point. That's all right. Just do the required, and that's it. You don't need to go burn yourself out, right? And I think that's a discussion already in terms of how the manager will explain to the employee that, you know, oh, I have a very good acronym, a very good saying: fortune favors the brave, right? If you want more, you have to step into the darkness. If you have to take that risk, right? Fortune favors the brave. And a good leader will be like, you don't really need to take the risk. You're quite good here, but if you want more, that's the direction that you go, and I can give you the tools, support, the guidance that you need to get there. But it's always going to be an exchange. There will always be an element of you stepping out of your comfort zone. Now, if they don't want to do any of that, they have to understand that if they are not willing to be brave, they have to be satisfied with the fortune that they have at that particular moment.
That's a very good one, Miguel. It's a good thing that this webinar recording This webinar is being recorded because we're definitely going to use those last few lines. They were gold. So thank you very much. Rhea, final thoughts?
I'm struck by the line around leaders' accountability, and the question in my head is, as a leader, what am I accountable for? Not just accountable to whom. And part of that accountability is to make decisions. Leadership is an exercise of decisions. It's not just an exercise of caring for people, but it's also an exercise of making decisions, especially the tough ones. That's why not everyone is a leader. So the accountability to support is there, but there is also an accountability to the business so that your team can receive continuously the support needed from the company. But I also believe that in tough decisions, it always has to come from a place of respect. And that's where employees or teams appreciate that whatever the decision might be by the manager, by management, for example, okay, the decision, we need to let you go or you can explore outside, it comes from a place of respect and trust.
Coming from a place of respect and trust. That is a wonderful note to end our Q&A session. And I thank our speakers and our audience for being patient, for being kind to each other, and most of all, for being honest, because that's what we're here to do. And we're here to try to help you as much as we can. So we appreciate you. Thank you very much, Rhea and Miguel, for the time that you've taken to impart industry knowledge and for helping us build a better, happier, mentally healthier Philippines. So, yeah. Okay, sorry. I thought I heard someone and now my mouse is speaking and running by itself again. Rhea and Miguel, just so that you can just rest for a little bit more, feel free to turn off your videos. So as Rhea might have mentioned earlier, I'm proud to announce that we have an upcoming employee wellbeing and mental health report with Mind You as our data partner. Now, this report is designed to help you research, brainstorm, and apply tried and tested methods of caring for your employees. One of the questions earlier that popped up was, how can we create pillars to start this? What best practices can we follow? Aside from the ones presented by both Rhea and Miguel, these will be available in this extensive report that we're preparing. Now, this is coming soon, and it will be sent to all of your emails. But in the meantime, please scan the QR code and download our previous reports that include best practices from the best workplaces in the country. Now, as mentioned earlier, Mind You is a great place to work certified company, and getting certified means that you as a manager, you as an employer, you value your workplace culture. And this validates and tells your workforce that you as a company take care of your most valuable assets, your employees. And it all starts with a survey. So please, stay tuned. Check the link in the chat box. I will send it in a bit to get started, and let's diagnose your workplace culture as partners. Now, for those of you who are already within our community as a certified company, that makes you eligible for our national lists. So our first list on the left is the annual Philippines Best Workplaces. There's no pay to play for our lists, okay? Because as we mentioned, you must first be certified, and then from there you become automatically eligible. Now, I know that November 15 is next week, but you know what? We've thought about it. And the people who are in this webinar, the people who have showed up here today are those who want to recognize their employees. So this small but meaningful extension to November 15 is for you. And please note the email, philippines@greatplacetowork.com. This is the direct email for our team, and we will reach you when we can. Now, our second list, and we are proud to announce this, it's monumental actually. It's our inaugural IT-BPM list in collaboration with IBPAP, the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines. I'm sure they're no stranger to the folks here, and we've teamed up with them to help elevate the industry and bring awareness for those IT-BPM companies that do exist, because they do have high trust workplace cultures. Yes, they're there. So the more we recognize great workplaces actually with these lists, the bigger the stand we take towards better work environments for all, and who wouldn't want that? So the deadline for this IT-BPM list is January 31. The earlier that you apply, the better. So please do reach out to our team, philippines@greatplacetowork.com, and we will try our best to educate you on how this can benefit your company. Okay. Now I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm very quickly going to pass the floor on to Mind You.
Um, sorry. So Mind You is a mental health organization. What we value or what we focus on really is providing business owners data, and not just data, but actionable data, very specific steps on how they can improve, you know, the well-being and the mental health environment of their organization. And the way we process our data is we are able to narrow down specifically whether it is a supervisory issue, is it a cultural issue, is it an engagement issue, is it, you know, is it a department issue, it could even be a seasonal issue, right? And we are able to track that kind of data and inform business owners that um, some interventions might be needed, right? So we provide psychological health and well-being. We also provide mental health education programs. And our goal really is to make people genuinely at peace with themselves, so that that then becomes a source of productivity and stability for the organization, right? So if you're interested to learn more, you can connect with us here. So thank you very much.
All right, make sure to take the screenshot, people. And thank you very much to Mind You for being our webinar partner for today. Now I'm just going to flash one more screen on my end. So if you would like to learn more about our webinars and about Great Place to Work Philippines, please head on over to our website, greatplacetowork.com.ph. And if you want to get straight to the point and speak to a member of our team, Philippines@greatplacetowork.com. We all have access to this. So I'm not kidding when I tell you that it is a direct link to our team. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I would like to thank everyone. Once again, my name is Zoe Rasal. I'm a radio DJ from the station Magic 89.9. I'm also the marketing business partner for Great Place to Work Philippines. On behalf of our speakers, and I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for representing for your companies. Thank you for valuing employee well-being and mental health, and have a greater day ahead.
Great Place to Work is the global authority in workplace culture. Our certification process is globally recognized, positioning you alongside high-trust, high-performing organizations worldwide, whether big or small. Our Trust Index survey is one of the easiest and most accurate surveys your people could take, which runs on the world's best employee experience software, Emprising. We're all about providing you with the feedback, reports, and real insights you need to drive your business into a sustainable future for your employees. I know it sounds like a lot, but don't worry, I'll break it down for you. The first thing we'll have you do is set up the Trust Index survey that uses a 1 to 5 truth scale to assess your employees' experiences at your company. It runs on Emprising, which can even be used on your computer or phone. To make it more interesting, it takes less than 20 minutes to go through the entire survey. When your employees are done assessing their current workplace culture, we'll have your representative answer what we like to call the culture brief. This gathers crucial information about your company for our reference. When the data's been processed, results are sent back to Emprising in real time. What you want to aim for is a Trust Index survey score that meets our global threshold, which makes you Great Place to Work certified, awarding you our trademarked certification badge, which you can use for globally recognized credibility all year round.
It is really amazing and humbling to see how much we've grown, how much our community have grown in a span of 3 years amidst the pandemic. Alone, we ran fast, but together, we ran far. And so I want to close by thanking all of you for joining us in advancing our mission in creating a better Philippines by building a great place to work for all.